All right, welcome to the Magical Experiments podcast. We're doing a special episode, a live episode on Substack. And we've already got a couple people joining us live, which is excellent. Sheena, welcome once again. We're going live here. We're going to be exploring what fuels magic and the difference between internal and external energy. And what I want to encourage is those of you who are live, if you want to ask questions as we're going along, feel free to drop those questions into the chat, and Sheena and I will explore it. So let's talk a little bit today about what fuels magic and how magic works, because I think it's a really important theme to explore in magical work. And depending on the type of energetic resource or fuel source or whatever you want to call it, you can actually end up either draining yourself or you can empower yourself, depending on what you're doing. But the difference is key and critical.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. So one of the questions that came up in the Facebook group, based on one of your other podcast episodes, was like, what is the difference between an internal and an external power source? So, what's an internal power source?
So your internal power source is going to be your life force. It's your energy. It's basically, if you think about it, it's what animates your physical body, right? So if you want to call that soul or spirit, or if you want to call it ki, in the Taoist term of ki or energy, which is a kind of a nebulous term, we can call it that too. We can call it life force, whatever it is we want to call it. That's what is internal energy.
So, emotional charge and mental focus are also internal energies.
Yeah, I mean our emotional energy, right, is going to be like if I'm in love with somebody, like I'm in love with you, for example, that is going to be an emotional charge that's coming from within me.
And what are some external energy sources?
So external energy sources would be well, it's the world around us. Like right now, I have a light on over here. That is an external source of energy. The sun would also be another external source of energy. The stars, the planets, the elements of nature. A thunderstorm could be an external source of nature. A stream could be an external source of nature. Electricity, which we don't even fully understand, is and kind of has its own magic, is a form of external energy.
Okay, so why do we default in magic to using internal energy?
That's a great question. And it really boils down to the fact that a lot of times we're improperly taught to draw upon our internal energy, or there's the perception that that's where it has to come from in order for magic to be effective. And I don't agree with that. In fact, the way that I tend to approach magic and teach people around how to do magic is to actually pretty much draw on external sources. The only internal resource that should really be applied is going to be that maybe that creative thought or idea. But being able to draw upon the energy around you, or if you are going to use an internal source of energy for a magical working, do it in a way where it's something that the reason you're doing it is because you're redirecting it. So for example, if I have an experience of like a negative emotion like fear or anxiety or something like that, and it's getting in the way of helping me manifest a result, I might take that emotion and redirect it toward the magical working as a way of allowing myself to move that charge out. But even then, really what I'm doing is I'm acknowledging that that energy is there and I'm finding a way to creatively use it. And I'm still marrying it to the external sources of energy as well. I'm curious, like, what's your take on that? Because I think that's always kind of interesting to explore that. And so, what's your take on that particular approach?
I think the important part of that process is that it's conscious. Um, It's like normally we will do magic because we're in such a heightened emotional state, or we have a problem, we have to fix it now, or I'm really angry, and that is absolutely drawing on our emotional resources, our life force, our energy. And there's if we're not careful about doing it consciously, like I always like to say, you should be raising heightened states to raise energy for magic and not responding to heightened states because it's messy. It's also, if that is the energy that you're like kind of thrusting out into the world, it is very much, especially in relationship or relational energy, whether that is with somebody who's here or, an entity or something else, that is the energetic pattern that is going to keep coming back. So it's really important when we're um, raising our energy that we're doing it from a place of neutrality first. And then we can be much clearer about what we're going to be creating or where that energy is flowing into.
Okay. I noticed that we have a couple more people who've joined us live. So I just want to mention to all of you that as you're watching this, if you have questions about what we're talking about, which is about what the difference is between internal and external energy and how magic works, please drop a comment in. We are answering those questions and comments as we're going live. So it's not just Sheena asking me questions or me asking questions to Sheena. It's also a group participation, and we're inviting you in.
Yes. No. It's shaped by the energy and the influence of who's in the room. So
Yeah, and talk about that. That is a form of external energy. In fact, that is basically, in one sense, it's attention, right? The
mhm.
attention is where the energy is going. So my attention right now upon you, or your attention upon me, is a form of that. And it looks like we got a question. Um, can you tell me more about magic in general and what it means to you? All right, I'll answer that question after you do, Sheena. I want you to answer first.
Magic is creating change on an interdependent system. Um, it is working with forces, both seen and unseen, working with our external influences, working with all of our internal influence, and creating new results.
Okay.
And, we can go as creative and ceremonial and chaos and use as many different streams as we want to, but it's fundamentally creating through the our desires, our intentions, raising energy and releasing it into the world, and taking the action needed to create a result.
All right, here's my definition of magic. It's taking the improbable and turning it into probability, and from there, manifesting it into reality, utilizing both mundane and magical techniques, the mundane actions. So it's taking an action that anyone could go out there and do in the world, but it's also marrying it to magical techniques and processes, whether that's working with an entity or a thought form or calling on a spirit, or it's using a process of turning a desire into a symbol, and from there translating that symbol into manifestation in the world, or you burning a candle and using the burning of the candle to direct energy. It is essentially a process that takes everything around you and condenses it and focuses it and collapses it into a point of awareness, and then you take that and expand it outward in order to create a new reality. And what it means to me, well, I will say that it has helped me manifest so many different opportunities and experiences and people in my life. It has helped me to create the life that I'm living, and it's helping me to create an amazing experience right now. I've used it to call in so many different experiences and processes and realizations. It's allowing me to do everything I want to do in my life right now. So that's what it means to me. Okay, Corey, you asked, so in some ways, would you say it's a multidimensional spiritual science? I mean, that's another way of saying it. Sure, we can certainly call it that. Um, I don't know. Any thoughts on that, Sheena? Beyond what I shared.
Yes, absolutely. I think magic is, yeah, it's asking with and sitting with and really examining those big questions. You can't effectively do magic, or as you know, I like to say we're living magical lives. We're like being magic. We can't be magic if we're not willing to look at the entire world around us and multidimensionality and what does that even mean? What is our role? What is our place? Um, where does our power lie? So it's it's an ongoing evolution, and that's why like magical experiments. It's like it's always we're always at the edge of asking of like what's possible and just saying we don't know. That's kind of one of my favorite phrases is, well, I don't know. Let's find out, let's explore, let's experiment. And I think if we always come from that space, we're always going to be creating magical lives.
As I like to put it, challenge what you know to discover what you can learn. Because what you know is a blinder, and what you can learn allows you to expand into the world around you and discover new opportunities and realizations and everything else. So that is absolutely essential. So let's kind of return back to the topic of internal versus external energy and things along those lines, because I think that's an important piece of all of this as well.
Yeah. Um, and so there are some cases where we absolutely want to be using our internal energy, and that's primarily for things for ourselves. Like if we're working on our health or, um, you know, Taylor, you have this, your whole system of inner alchemy. It's like it's really going into our bodies, being grounded in our beings, using ourselves and as both maintenance and magical tool. So that's completely appropriate to be using our internal energy. And yeah, we can absolutely be drawing in external energy from that as well, especially like if our internal energy is compromised. But then we have to stop and we have to go, okay, why is our internal energy compromised? And sometimes when we are constantly working off of our own reserves, and this goes into a lot of unconscious beliefs, it has to be hard. I have to sacrifice. We have so many culturally patriarchal conditioned responses that have kind of crept into kind of our magical workings and our beliefs around magic. So, sometimes we have to prove something to ourselves, or our egos gets involved. It's my power and I'm the one who's creating the results. Um, and sometimes the result of this is that we fall into these patterns of like, well, it has to be hard. I'm supposed to be exhausted after doing magic. If I'm not, well, then I haven't gotten the result. We're looking for some sort of validation that it's working. And that's a trap that just leaves us exhausted.
Yeah, I would say like when I look at internal energy, like why I would use internal energy, I've definitely used it to communicate, for example, with what I'll call the spirits of the body. So I have this book called Inner Alchemy of Life where I talk about how to connect with the neurotransmitters and the hormones and the bacteria of the body and communicate with them in order to change the physiology of the body, and actually also teach a class on that as well. Um, and it's really about learning to work with that internal energy. Or if I'm doing something along the lines of like martial arts, so I practice kung fu and I also practice qigong, and so being able to draw upon that internal key, that internal energy, whether I'm fighting somebody and trying to defend myself, or sparring, or if I'm doing internal energy for healing. As an example, a few weeks back, I got into a boxing match and my rib got bruised. So what I've been doing ever since then, every day, has been doing qigong, and I've been basically working with that internal energy, drawing on some external energy, but working with my internal energy to heal my rib. And it's been interesting. I kind of watched like the first week, it was like a sharp pain, and then the last couple of weeks, it's steadily healed quicker and quicker. It's basically to the point where it doesn't really hurt anymore. So, it's one of those cases of using that internal energy to help with the cultivation of healing. It can be used for releasing emotional tensions and blockages or things along those lines. But let's focus then on external energy. So, like we've talked about inner alchemy, but then when are we drawing on external energy?
Well, when we're creating entities, when we're, you know, if we're using our own energy, you're basically signing up to be like a full-time energetic caretaker, or you're unintentionally programming your entity to work on your depletion. It's like, oh, it wants to grow. It's just taking energy. So it's kind of like parenting a toddler that never sleeps. We don't want to be using our life force for ongoing sustained magical workings, um, especially when there's so many other forms of energy. It's like it's the difference between being, a battery that it gets depleted and then either has to get recharged or it dies, or we're just plugging into a wall outlet and the electricity is flowing through us. We're directing it, we're directing the focus, but it's not coming directly from us. And if we're always working off our own internal energy, you burn out your life force. You actually condition your body to treat magic as a stress event. So, from a physiological and a neurological perception, um, you start sending your body into fight or flight. Or even just the idea of doing magic kind of like leaves you paralyzed because unconsciously that or your body knows that it's going to be taking your life resources. So, there's a lot of consequences to using internal magic. There's a lot of exhaustion, a lot of chronic health issues kind of have that stem of like just not having stagnation, uh, not having the life force necessary to really keep all of our internal systems, both physically and energetically, going.
Yeah, I think those are all really good reasons to draw upon external sources of energy. So I know for my own approach, one of the things that I like to do is I like to marry mundane actions with magical work. So for example, if I'm going out there and I'm looking for a job, as a good example, this is something most people can relate to because we've all done it at one time or another, right? And so I'm looking for a job. Well, I know I'm going to have to fill out applications. I know I'm going to have to go to interviews. I might have to work on a resume. And through all of that, I'm probably going to be dealing with some form of frustration around it because job hunting isn't exactly fun. And I've got to be clear about what I want and what I don't want. I mean, a lot of times people are clear about what they want, but they don't always define what they don't want. I think that's really important. Define what you want and also be clear about what you don't want. You don't want to work, for example, with a micromanager, then actually make that clear if you're going to be doing magical work around this, right? But I'll take those mundane actions, filling out the application, working on the resume, going in for interviews, all that other stuff, and I'll actually feed that into the magical working. That's an external source of energy right there. It's actions that I'm doing in the world around me. And what I'm also doing at the same time is I might draw internally on that frustration, right? Because I'm feeling that frustration and I might as well just put it right into the magical working. But I'm not going to draw on anything else. I'm not going to draw on my life force or anything else along those lines. I'm just going to take that emotion because the emotion itself is just an experience in the moment. It's not who I am. And a key point of magical work that I think is really important, and we're going to return to this in future episodes, is recognizing that like like an emotion is not your identity, but the identity of who and what you are definitely does translate into the results. So if you have a specific result in mind that you want, you have to basically change yourself from the inside out, even as you're changing the world from the outside in, to bring them together and create the desired possibility that you want to manifest. Now, a lot of times, what I also like to do with external energies, I like to work with whatever else is around me. For example, if there's a thunderstorm, it's possible that we could work with that thunderstorm, drawing upon that elemental energy. You know, that energy is already being expressed in the world around us. So it's an easy thing to grab onto and work with. If you work with a spirit, you call up a spirit, then you can work with that spirit and actually ask that spirit to essentially use its energy and effort. And spirits, when you look at it, spirits actually have a much closer connection to the infinite energy and abundance because they're in the spirit realm. Now, the key thing, but here's the irony of all that: the key thing is that they're not in manifest form. We are. We are spirits made manifest, and so we have that power of manifestation, and that's where that can be an interesting combination to explore. Again, this is something we'll talk about more in future episodes. But the key thing with the difference between internal and external energy is I like you said, Sheena, I don't want to be drawing on the internal energy to the point where I'm burning myself out or I'm getting sick. I made that mistake many, many, many years ago when I was doing when I first started out with magical work. And what I quickly realized was not only did it leave me feeling really tired and sick, it actually, significantly drained me in ways that wasn't conducive to other efforts that I was involved in. It was kind of actually working against my best interests and efforts. But when I started looking at how I could take what was around me in the environment and apply that as an energetic source, I found that then I was able to get a lot more accomplished, and I wasn't drawing upon my own internal energy. And if anything, I was able to actually preserve my internal energy and then deepen it and cultivate it further through the inner alchemical processes so that I would have even more when I needed it.
Yeah, I think that the important thing to keep in mind is that, like, the goal is really to channel energy through us and don't raise it from us, from our own reserves. Um, it's like one of my favorite things to work with magically is crystals, and particularly quartz. And yeah, I love rocks. It's one of my things, but it's like they're very dynamic energy tools. And if you think about it, like quartz watches changed how we really were able to use and view time, because I remember still like the first time I got like my Timex, I was so excited. It's like, time used to be, as far as like keeping track of time, clocks, watches used to be mechanical. They used to be finite. You would have to wind them up physically, use your energy to physically wind them, and then, eventually they would die and you would have to start losing time and you'd have to wind them up again. But, with quartz, it has piezoelectric qualities, which means it's generating an electric charge. It's vibration, um, when mechanical stress is applied to it. So that's why, a quartz watch, it didn't need to have a battery. It didn't need to have, the mechanical winding. The crystal's oscillation was actually what was keeping time. So in like magical practice, like crystals can act as energy reserves, as batteries. By applying our attention to it, we can actually tap into these stored energies and direct it without depleting our own energy reserves. So that's kind of my main example of how I like to work with external energy. Is I love the crystals, and also, everything's got its own vibration, its own kind of its matter, its own vibrational field, and what it's kind of in alignment to. So you're actually accessing those currents as well, just in its densest, grossest form as a rock or a stone.
So another way that we can work with external sources of energy is through the process of creating a magical entity. And you
Mm-hmm.
and I actually have a class coming up on Sunday, which is all about how to build a customized attention entity. So, real briefly, let's just go a little teaser into this. What is a customized attention entity?
It is an entity that is designed to help you develop a relationship with your attention and see where you want to consciously apply it. There's a bunch of different types. You can use attention entities, for your body, for as a mental filter, as a way of fine-tuning opportunities, as a filter, as even a protective barrier. If other people's attention is coming onto you and you don't want it, you can actually use it as a defensive tool as well. Um, it is a ally and a friend that is, so we are drawing on your attention in the class as we're refining, as we're creating it, but we're not going to be feeding it through your conscious attention and focus. So it's an ally to help you with your attention and focus.
What's meant to protect your attention and focus, actually, which is a huge thing in this age of distraction. I'm going to actually pop the link here into the chat. So for those of you who are interested and want to learn more about the class, you can check that out there. But the important thing is that it's really designed to protect your energy and your attention. It's designed to help you focus that energy and tension in ways that brings more intention into the way that you live your life and helps you manifest results better. And really, we live in a world, magically and mundanely, where we are defined by outcomes to some degree or another. It's funny. The other week, I was teaching a class actually on the Erosian current of magic, and I made the point that no matter what type of magic you practice, there's always a result. And it even came right down to devotional magic, because a lot of people will think like, oh, devotional magic, like, I'm in a relationship with a deity. It's a devotional relationship where I'm worshiping them or honoring them or whatever. And I pointed out that there's still a result there. The result is that you want to have a relationship with that spirit. You want to have a relationship with that deity. Even if you're not asking for anything in a mundane sense of the word, some material result or anything like that, you still want something. So it's really important to recognize that. And that's where something like a customized attention entity can be so valuable and precious, because it allows you to safeguard your attention and define what it is that you want to actually direct your attention toward.
Yes. And the beautiful thing about it is it's so customized to you. And the process that we're going to be going through is really looking at the different types of attention that you want to cultivate in your life, that you want to bring in more of, how you want to direct it, how you want to filter it, and really just reclaiming and being sovereign. I think that that's really our goal, is to create and to help create as many sovereign magicians as we can. And your attention is currency. Marketing, wars are fought over attention. And part of that goes back to what you were saying, Taylor, about it's like, well, we are incarnated. We are the only ones who can actually manifest through taking action, through living on this 3D material plane. And that's why our attention is so important.
Exactly. So, we talked a bit about that. Let's continue on with our discussion about internal versus external energies.
Okay. I'm kind of curious, to everyone who's joining us. This idea of, like, one of the easiest way to tell if you are using your internal sources or external sources of magic is, how do you feel when you're doing magic? Are you feeling energized? Are you feeling excited? Or like, you might be a little buzzy, but you're very grounded. Or are you feeling tired? Are you feeling drained? Do you feel like you have to go and take a nap afterwards? So I'm just curious about like your general activities when you're doing magic, whether that's, ritual or healing
So,
or whatever types of magic that you're doing. Like, how do you feel afterwards? And where do you pull your energy from? Like, do you do external sources? Do you do crystals? And even like raising energy through like dance or something like that? Like, share with us.
all right. And while they're sharing with us, I'll share some thoughts on what I do and how I feel. So anytime I do a magical working, I actually feel grounded and inspired and creative with that magical work. And a large part of that is because, for the most part, I'm not drawing on my internal energy. And if I am drawing on internal energy, it's really just to provide a little bit of direction and focus to what it is that I'm doing. And having been there, done that, where I didn't always feel that way. And, I'll give a great example of like what not to do. A long time ago, when I was like 18 years old and I was dating my first girlfriend had a friend in Utah who was going to be getting a surgery for a tumor like that was on his neck. She was really worried about the fact that if it was done, if the surgery went wrong, he could be paralyzed for life. So I heard all that, and I went out to the woods and I did a magical working, and I was like, hey, I was calling to the earth. I'm like, I will give my energy for this so that you can protect this person, right? And I was like basically doing like a healing work. Well, the surgery happened, and what was interesting is that after when the surgery happened, the tumor had for the most part gone away. There was no danger. It just poof disappeared just like that. But here was the flip side of that. I ended up getting really sick, and I was really tired after that. I was because what had happened is I had used my life force energy, and I had actually invited the spiritual powers that I was working with to draw upon that. That's a rookie mistake. A lot of people do that when they start practicing magic because they don't know better. And so it was a good. It was a good. It's a good example of like what not to do. That experience taught me a valuable lesson, and that's when I started to really look at like, well, how can I do magical work where I'm not drawing upon myself in order to do the magical work any more than is absolutely necessary.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's something that we've all done. Um, I think also, especially kind of as women, we're taught to like, you just give of your body, literally, and you just keep giving and giving and giving, and we just kind of do it really unconsciously. And even just like the really innocent saying, like, oh, I'm sending you energy. It's such like a common and ubiquitous thing. We're just doing it. Oh, like, but we never stop to go, okay, where's that energy coming from? Is it our energy that we're sending? Is it, or are we tapping into an external energy source and we're allowing it to flow through us, through it to whoever it needs it? It's kind of like, when you're doing Reiki, it's like it is universal energy that is flowing through you. You shouldn't be ending up being tired. And there's so many um, magicians who are also healers who are always tired and exhausted. And, at the end of the day, they're like, oh, why am I so tired? Or why do I have these headaches after I've been doing a ritual? Or, why do I have like, why am I feeling like distracted? Why can't I focus afterwards? Or, why am I feeling so emotionally raw? If anybody an empath, before you actually learn your boundaries and your space holding for yourself and to maintain your energy, it's you're at the mercy of, everything, everyone else's experience. And it's very disempowering and it can lead to chronic physical issues.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just one example. I mean, you can apply that really to any healing is just one example. You can apply that to really any type of magical work that you do. If you're drawing it primarily from yourself, you're definitely doing it. And that's not a like a judgment or anything else. That's more like a cautionary, like, hey, don't do that because it's not necessarily the best way you want to approach this. But if you're able to draw upon external sources of energy and just using maybe the creative spark or the idea or providing just a little bit of energy internally toward it, that's going to get you a lot further, and you're not going to necessarily be tired and worn out or sick or anything like that. Which, and again, I've met plenty of people like that. I've been that person, so you're in good company here if you've done that. Now, you've seen a couple more people joined, and we're probably going to wrap up pretty soon here. But before we do that, I want to invite any questions or comments that you have about everything that we've discussed here, because again, this is your opportunity to ask that while we're live, and I always love those live questions. It just makes it that much more fun and interesting.
Absolutely. And there is like a baseline check to see whether you're using internal or external energy. And what I like to do is like before any working, I'll just like look at my energy level and, just a quick check, physical, mental, emotional, like just a body scan and just being honest about where I am. And then post working, again, just that really quick check in of like, am I depleted? Am I feeling neutral? Am I feeling energized? Um, if you're feeling depleted, like especially in your nervous system, like you're wired but you're tired, or you're raw, or you might be having a nervous system response. You're probably using internal energy. Um, if you're feeling energized but grounded, and like, you are feeling nourished, then you're probably using external energy sources. And you can also muscle test or draw cards or whatever your process is to just kind of check in with yourself afterwards and see.
Yeah, perfect examples of what to do. So I think we've kind of clarified what the difference is between internal and external energy is, or do you think we've missed anything?
I mean, there's always more to explore. I think the really interesting side of it is when like the personal meets the collective, especially when you're doing like partner group or partner work or group work, really paying attention to the energy, like what energy you are contributing that is your own or that you're channeling through for a group working, and also where that energy is going. Um, there's definitely times, you find yourself in a group situation and you're energized after, and then other times you're completely exhausted and you don't know why. And, you know, energy harvesting exists. There's any
Well, psychic
energy that is,
vampires.
yep,
Psychic vampires are a great example of that. Like, there are people who can kind of just who will end up like getting off on conflict, or who will get energized by basically draining other people's emotions and energies, and so that's kind of something to be aware of too. There are times where that'll happen, and some of those people may not even realize they're doing it, and then some people, on the other hand, are very intentional about what they're doing.
yeah. And looking at the energy patterns that you're engaging in too, because even if you get into one of those beautiful political arguments that we're having right now, that it fundamentally is like the question is, where is that energy going? And it doesn't really matter if you're for something or against something. It's like if you're engaging in that energy and you're giving your life force, your attention to it, who's benefiting from it? And that's really a important question when we're looking at energy work in general, and especially magical work. It's who's benefiting from this, and sometimes the question of who's not benefiting from this can be a really good kind of exploration to have.
Well, it's like feeding the egregore, right? In a sense, like that. And that. So here I am. I'm getting into this big conversation, this political conversation, and I'm feeding the egregore of that, as opposed to could I take that and redirect it? And don't get me wrong, sometimes it is important to have those conversations. Definitely, we're at a flashpoint. I'll say for right now in the U.S., certainly, which is where I'm based, where we're definitely at a flashpoint right now, where there's a lot of conversations happening in this moment around that.
Yeah,
And I'm sure for where you are too, up in Canada, that you're also having some conversations up there too because of the upcoming election.
yeah. And talking about feeding the kind of the common or the collective egregore, big shout out to Gray. If you're on here and you want to post a link to your Substack post that you did a couple of days ago, that was such a clear and perfect explanation of feeding these collective egregores, um, and what's happening, what's going on behind the scenes right now. So that was a wonderful read. So thank you for that.
All right. So I think also it's kind of one thing that really fascinates me sometimes in regards to all of this is the fact that really there's been these different processes and techniques that have been around for a long, long time. I mean, like I said earlier, I practice martial arts. I practice kung fu, which is one of the world's oldest martial arts systems. It's been around for over 3,000 years. You have qigong, which has been actually around even longer than that. And so this isn't exactly new, and yet a lot of times I think because of kind of where we are with modern day society and everything else, it's very easy to lose track of the importance of taking care of your internal energy and external energy. I mean, we see all kinds of productivity classes, we see stuff around habits, we see all kinds of other hacks and things along those lines. What's the difference between that and what we're talking about here, in your opinion?
Hmm. Oh, I think awareness and attention and intention. We're also looking at things from a whole system. No, we're looking at it from the mundane, we're looking at it from the magical, we're looking at it on all levels, from your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. We're looking at the intersection of individual versus collective. We're looking at it from a state of wholeness, and we're not siloing things into a box. We learned how really well to do that in school. You have your math class, you had your drama class and your music class, and none ever met. They're just in their separate little boxes. And we're really looking at this from a perspective of wholeness and what's going on in the whole system and an interdependent system. And we're looking at how can we create change within an interdependent system. I love productivity hacks and personal development and all of that, but sometimes we have to go bigger and zoom out and go, how is this affecting us as a whole being? And that's very
As a human being,
multidimensional.
as a human being,
Mm,
in a way, as a collective, right? How's it expecting? How is it factoring into the evolutionary collective that we all are, and shaping us? And how can we shape it in turn? And how can we do it in mutuality?
yeah, yeah. It's really about breaking down the silos and the separateness. And that's I love finding the miracles in the mundane and life itself and being magic. Um,
Well, and that's what
it,
that's what you and I are doing. We're exploring the magical life together, right?
mhm,
And sharing that with all the wonderful people here.
yeah. So I do have, because we're magical experiments, um, we do have an experiment that we are going to suggest for all of you that we'll be doing as well. And we're encouraging you to post and leave your results. But it's really kind of doing a bit of an energy audit. And I need a better name for it because that just sounds totally too mundane. Um, but it's just choose a magical working. And it doesn't have to be huge. It could be lighting a candle, crafting a sigil, even just stirring your intention into your tea in the morning. Um, but before you do it, just checking in with your body and your nervous system. And then while you're doing your working, consciously choose a source of external energy. So you could be doing it under the light of the sun, or you could be doing it while you're listening to your favorite song and using the energy and the tone and the vibration from the song, or you could be using the energy of a crystal, or um, you might decide to do it with a partner or a friend and have do a group drumming or clapping your hands, whatever you want to do. But just do the working from that space of you're tuning into a specific conscious external energy. And then afterwards, just write down how you feel. Notice if there was any difference, how long the energy lasted, if you had any kind of sensations in your body, if you felt better, or just whatever shows up is absolutely perfect. And you might find oh, well, this was sticky, or I had a little bit of trouble with this, or whatever shows up for you. It's very useful information to just start tracking. And then it also gets us into the habit of just naturally using our environments more. One of my favorite ways to harness external energy through my body, because I'm very kinesthetic. Um, Everything's got to flow through my body anyways, which kind of makes it sometimes a little bit more difficult because you tend to start using your internal energy just because it's habit and because that's what's available. But it's one of my favorite things to do is walk. So I make walking into a magical act. And while it is my body that is taking the steps, the magic is that point of contact with the earth is creating energy that is fueling my magical working, whatever it happens to be that day. So it's just really an invitation to notice and to start playing.
I love it. Let's do it, and we'll post about that a little bit later down the line. So thank you all who came on here live. We really appreciate it. Thank you for the questions that were asked earlier. And we will have a replay of this up here momentarily for any of you who missed out on it. And if you're curious about the class, go ahead and check out the link or check it out when the post goes live here, because we are really excited about sharing that with all of you on Sunday, and it's going to be a very fun class. We're going to walk you step by step through how to create a customized attention energy. We're going to also do some somatic work around releasing the attention drainers and things along those lines that are occupying your life. Anything
And
else you
I'll
want to
also
add to that?
be, yes, I'm also going to be doing a attention retrieval ritual through Akashic Records as well. So it's going to be fun. You're going to feel like you have so much more energy because you're bringing all your attention home through across space and time.
There you go. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank
Sheena.
you.